I want to welcome you to Empowering Pastors and Leaders today. We are going to tackle a new topic, and I believe it's going to take us 2 weeks. I want to start covering the topic on how to keep your guests. Now, this again, it literally goes across platforms. It's not just for church, but it also works for leaders and business people. Because really, if you look at ministry, what you're trying to do is generate souls. And for business, what you're trying to generate is money. And all of those come with people. So to retain people means you're going to be able to accomplish your goal. So today I want to start talking about this topic and how, especially just recently, we've finalized Easter at his tabernacle. It was the highest numbers I think we've ever seen in the history of the church. And even last week, we ministered to over 1,000 people face to face in this building, which was great success. But is it success? And is our success minimalized because we aren't paying attention to how to retain more people? And I think it's important to understand that we've got to tackle this topic as a church and as a company because our goal is to grow. Now, amazingly enough, statistically, the average church diminishes 30% a year. So every year, a church will, let's just say, start off at 100. They're going to lose 30 people. Now, the 30 people might be lost by backsliding. It might be people that just are angry and walk out the building. It might be people that move out of the arena, move out of the area. But no matter how it is concocted, there is a loss of 30 out of 100. So if a church is not growing by 30% or increasing by that same, then they're on the decline. And in American churches right now, there is a decline that is happening because we are not retaining more than we're losing. Now, in New York State, what's very interesting is we had a flush moment. And that is when our governor and all the intensity happened with COVID, people left New York by the droves. I believe 500,000 people left New York City alone. I know in our church, we lost between last year and this year, we've lost, I believe it's going to be right around 14 or 15 families that are going to be moving to other states. They're not mad at the church. They just don't want to be here anymore. So they leave. And you can't blame them. High taxes, we can go through all the list of stuff. But the fact is that no matter how you're losing them, you're losing them. So the people that are not gaining more are on the decline. In a business that does that, it means their fiscals are dropping. Well, it's the same way in a church. If you don't have people there, you don't have tithe. If you don't have tithe, you don't have finance. You don't have finances, there's decrease. So our goal is very clear, and that is we must learn how to retain our guests. We must learn how to increase the number of customers that you're having come into your company. And if you cannot do that, then no matter how good your product is, you are going to close the business. It's just a matter of time. And that's, sadly enough, what's happened to many churches. Many churches, their doors are still open, but they're actually closed. And they're closed because everyone there is old. They haven't had a guest in forever. And what ends up happening is they're just sustaining themselves. Now, I know a local church. I think there's 15 people left in the building that seats, I think, 300 or 400. And the only reason their doors are still open is simply because somebody died and gave them $300,000. That's the only thing that's sustaining them, or they would already be closed. Because not enough tithe is coming into the building. No new guests are coming into the building. So really, they're already a closed building. And the challenge is that you and I must stay on top of this, because if we do not, then we too can easily be sucked into the mode of loss and diminishing rather than increasing and growing. So that's something we definitely want to touch. I want to talk a little bit about acquisition and retention. Acquisition is what? That is when you're acquiring people. Retention is when you're keeping people. Just because you've acquired doesn't mean you've kept. And that is, well, that's the battle of church and business. You know, have you ever heard it said people are church shopping? They pump from church to church. I'm just church shopping. Well, what do you mean you're church shopping? Well, they're trying to see what fits them. They're going to see what they like, what they don't like. And so a church, they can walk into a church even for a few weeks and yet leave. Did the church acquire them? They did for 2 or 3 weeks. Did they retain them? No. So what happened is there's more loss. So acquisition and retention in the kingdom means really eternity. So it's far more important in the church world to talk about this topic than it is in just business. Business loss is money. Church loss is souls. So our goal and really our business is souls. And so we have to pay attention to the process. So you know automatically you've got to have a vision. Number 2, the vision has to be clear. The vision clarifies our target demographic. I found that many pastors, I recently visited a church, and when I went in with the demographics. Well, why did I do that? Well, I know what to speak when I realize the demographic. Why is that? Well, because I'm realizing what kind of community it is, what kind of message, maybe the whole community is in sludge. So let's just take Elmira, for example. When you start looking at Elmira alone, just in its demographics, it is like when I came here, it was 1% African American, no Latinos, everybody was white. So when you come into that kind of arena, you're preaching to that kind of community. Well, praise the Lord, over the years, finally diversity has actually started to come to our community. And now what's happened is I was so excited on last Sunday when I was watching our community and the diversity within our community. The African-American community is here. The African community is here. The Latino community is here. We have some folks from Asia here. We're starting to see diversity, not just Caucasian. So what happens is when you start understanding diversity, when you start understanding the vision has to literally, if you're going into an arena and it's all white folk, then that's nice, but you have to preach differently than you would if it is a multicultural dimension. So the vision must be clear according to the demographics of the people. I remember when I came here, like I said, I told you the demographics. I made the declaration from the beginning that we are going to be a multicultural church. And I was like, people said to me, well, you know, Pastor, I just think you need to be real. Well, you know what? I just know that what God spoke to me, that we would be a multicultural church. And I believe we have 20 nations in our church right now. That to me is multicultural. And that shows that no matter where you start, you can end differently if you have the vision to get there. So you must know the vision, and the demographics enable you to create a strategic plan. So when we're starting to talk about acquisition and retention, you have to have a plan for this. It's not something that just happens. You can't just go in and say, well, I want to preach the gospel. Well, that's nice, but how are you going to keep them? Now, back in the book of Acts, there was what I call organic growth. Organic growth was phenomenal. You know, we know the very first message Peter preached, how many people got saved? 3,000 men got saved, not counting women and children. A few chapters later, another 5,000 got saved. Well, not too long after that, what occurred? The very first faction. What was it? The widows. Some said, well, we're not being treated as good as these. And then organization and structure had to come. Where there is no structure, you cannot retain. Structure is actually freedom. Where there is no structure, there is no freedom. You only have anarchy. So as a leader, when we start talking about how to keep our guests, we must ask ourselves what type of structure we have within our church that would be able to house the people that are going to come and visit. You know, all these people, I want revival. You couldn't handle revival. You couldn't handle revival because you couldn't handle the amount of people that would come. I know as my staff that are sitting here, I've asked you multiple times, what happens if next week the church doubles? Can your structure in your ministry department handle a double? And if not, then why are you asking God to double? God can't trust you with what you can't handle. So that talks clearly to the effect that you must have a strategic plan to be able to house the retention that you're asking God for. So you have all these guests come in on a Sunday. So let's just talk his tabernacle. So I believe on that Easter Sunday morning, there was near 1,100-ish. So 1,100 people coming through the building-ish. That's nice, that's beautiful, that's kind, that's glorious. But could the structure handle it? Could the salvation department handle it? Could the guest relations person handle it? Could the parking lot handle it? Could the ushers handle it? Could the children's department handle it? We can go through all of the different departments, and if you couldn't handle 1,000 folks every Sunday morning, then why do you think God would give you 1,000 folks every Sunday morning? So we have to have a strategic plan to be able to deal with this thing called how to keep your guests. Because I believe this without any question. God will never give you more than you can love properly. So if you can't love them properly, if you can't take care of them properly, God is not going to send them. God won't trust you with them. A church that's not a soul-winning church, why do you think God's going to send you souls? If you don't give an altar call, why do you think God would send you somebody? They're going to sit in your church service, and God knows that they're never going to have an opportunity to be born again. You're never going to give it to them. Everything comes down to a strategic plan. And as a leader, your job is to be strategic. You cannot be thinking 15 minutes ahead of yourself. You have to have strategy. And of course, the person that said amen on the front row on my left is an engineer by trade. And by an engineer by trade means they got to have things in order. They have to be thinking ahead. That's just the nature of that beast. But many leaders are not engineer thinkers. We are what we call visionaries. The problem with most churches, most leaders, is they have a vision, but they don't have the ability to put strategy to their vision. Not that they can't, they're just, got the vision. That's nice. But without the strategy to make the vision occur and grow, then it is just a dream. Because, again, you cannot be trusted with what you cannot love properly. So the interesting part, too, is once you have your strategy down, now you have to ask your question, how am I drawing people to the house? How am I going to get new customers into a business? Well, there's 5 sub shops within 5 miles. Why would they want to come to yours? Well, new one opened up. My wife loves that one, Jersey Mike's. It's a good one. I don't know if I can say this out loud. How do I say this? Yeah, I don't know if I can't go back and fix that because I dropped the name. So, some sub shops are better than other sub shops. But marketing plays a massive part in that. If you come in with a name, you have a greater opportunity to gain guests than somebody who calls themselves Ray's Sub Shop. Who's Ray? You know, the name is huge and marketing is huge. If we're going to gain guests, draw guests, we must have, let's talk about church now, we must have an outreach department. One of the great failures of many leaders in church, because they're visionaries, they will start gathering followers and they will abandon outreach and just focus internal. Well, what that does is that will build a strong internal base, but if you have no new blood coming in, then your base doesn't get wider, doesn't get stronger, doesn't hold more capacity to go higher. So we've got to ask ourselves, What type of outreach department do we have if you're a church? Better yet, if you're a company, what kind of outreach department do you have? It's the same principle. How are you going to get people through your door? How many people, there are 10,000 cars, drive by Old Ithaca Road every single day? How many care that there's a church down in the cornfield? How many will walk through the door on their own? Do you know that the majority of people will never walk into a church on their own? In fact, most people are so habitual by nature that if they're going to Ray's sub shop, they're not even going to check out the other one unless someone says, hey, let's go. Well, I go to Ray's every day. I go to Ray's and I get a Parmesan cheese sub, with extra parm and some pickles, and I do a little extra sauce on top at Ray's. And they said, but I want to go to this new one. Come on now, it's nationwide. It's all over the place. We need to go there. I'll go. They'll go and they'll get a sub and they'll go, that's not bad. And they'll branch. It's the same way in the kingdom. Why would anybody want to walk in your church? Why would anybody want to walk in your ministry? They're not coming in on their own. Who's bringing them? What outreach opportunity do you have? What are you doing to reach into their home, to reach into their life, to bring a bypass to them so that they're at least going to come through your door? If you have no plan, then really all you have is you have no plan, which means you have no visitors, which means you're dead. You're not going to make it. A business with no new customers, because customers die. Customers move. Let's just take church numbers, 30% a year. So you start off with 100 customers. Woo, that's great. Well, what happens by the end of the second year? You're down to what, 60 or 70 customers? Well, now your bottom line has dropped. Now you got to let Susie go, who was making your subs for you. And now you can't be open as much because you can't afford to have the rest of the people there. Now your insurance has gone higher, so you're going to close your company. And you're going to close your church. Because where there is no money, there is no church. Well, I think it's spiritual. Oh, you can get as spiritual as you want. Where there is no money, there is no church. Well, I'm eating a garage. Well, somebody pays the mortgage payment for that garage. Somebody pays for the lights to put it on. And even if it's Larry putting on the lights, paying for it himself, Larry's still paying. Where there is no money, there is no church. So everything comes down to, we cannot be ignorant that we must be people of strategic mindset to say, how will I increase the customer base? How will I increase the guests coming in the door? How will I do that? Now, there's a phenomenal book. If you haven't read it yet, I've read it so many times. I probably read it about 15 times. It's called The Autopsy of a Deceased Church. I know our staff did that at one period of time, and we'll probably do that as a group read again. And it gets into the main reasons, and what Tom Rainer did was he did a study and he collected a group of churches that had closed. Some of them, thousands and thousands of people, some of them smaller churches, medium-sized churches, brought them together and he said, I want to do an autopsy on these churches and I want to see if there was anything that was a norm that produced death. And he found some. And one of them, no outreach department. Where there was no outreach department in a church, that was one of the main reasons that these churches died. One was a large church. And he said it was amazing walking. They had already been closed, and he was able to walk through. The curator took him through the building. He said it was kind of eerie because it was a large building, empty. was empty because they did not acquire new followers. Now, what's very unique in the church world today is that 80% of all church growth is church transfer. This group gets mad at the pastor here, so they bump over to this church over here. They get mad at that pastor. Remember, if they come in like a group, they leave like a group. So they bump over here, they bump over there, they bump over here. In our area, there was like a 5-church rotation for 20, 30 years. They would come to this church and I would say, you know, this church isn't for everybody. Keep going. Go to that. Don't bypass. Keep going. Don't bypass the old way. Go to the next church. You'll be around again. They did. And they still do here. Even since then, 2 churches have closed that were in the rotation. Why? Because old growth doesn't produce new growth. You've got to know that you've got to get fresh people, fresh customers, not church transfer. And sadly enough, the churches that don't understand this or are just competing, come on now, that's really what it is. You're competing for customers. They're already a customer. They're somewhere. Now you're competing for the same customer. Well, what about all these people that have never been to a sub shop? You see, these people will always be dissatisfied. The buffet of Christianity. They go to the Chinese restaurant for a period of time. They'll go maybe 2 or 3 months. They get sick of the Chinese restaurant, or they got some chicken wings that were cold. So now they're going to go to the Italian buffet. They go to the Italian buffet, and they love it for maybe 3 or 4 months. Manja. Everything's beautiful. Then they say, well, you know what? I'm getting bored with the Italian. I'm going to go to the Mongolian. Boom, 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 boom. Until you realize you got to get new growth. And what we're talking about in the kingdom, that means new salvations. When you get new salvations, they're loyal to whom? Ray's Sub Shop. They're not even thinking about leaving Ray's Sub Shop until somebody invites them to Jersey Mike's. And when they get to Jersey Mike's, they're going to like Jersey Mike's. But not as much as Ray's. You know why? Because they believe in Ray. That's the vision. So the question is, with every one of us, and what is represented in this room and what is represented online, is we're not just talking churches, we're not just talking businesses, we're talking departments. And the amazing part about each department is you are pulling from the same pool. And you're just trying to get people from one department to the other department because you like them in your department. But how many people in the pool have never gone to the jacuzzi? Which means, how many people are in a church that have never volunteered for one ministry, yet everyone bypasses them because they always see the ones that are working. So therefore, they want to get the ones that are working because they're already working. So let's get them over to our department now, rather than going after somebody that's never worked in the kingdom before. So we must have a plan. Now, if you are a church under 500 people, you must have a marketing plan. Your gain is from marketing. Now, once you crest the 500 barrier, the statistics show that once you cross 500, the majority of guests that are going to come through your doors are not because of marketing, but because of word of mouth. But even once you get the word of mouth and you start getting increase, marketing cannot stop. Well, why can't marketing stop? What is marketing? Marketing, people say, well, that's worldly. No, it isn't. Marketing is this. Marketing is putting your name on someone's lips so that when they decide they want to go check out a sub shop, your name, Ray's, is the first one that comes to their head. Fact is that you can have the best restaurant in the world, the best food in the entire state of New York, and no one will come if they don't know you're there. You can have all good intentions, but if they don't know you're there, they're not coming. And it's not even they don't like you. They don't know you. Pastor Lucy and I were going to go up to eat somewhere. I forgot which. I think it was our anniversary. Was it our anniversary? Yeah, maybe. Where did Cody send us, remember? Sent us up to Ithaca. I don't remember what it was. But anyways, what's that? So he said, have you tried out the Antler yet? And I said, you mean the one in Pennsylvania? No, the one in Ithaca. I said, well, no, I've never tried that. So we drove up, we sat down. Wow. Not just the food, but the ambiance was great. The smell of the fire was amazing. The service was awesome. And, I think I wrote, the bill was $150. And you know what? I didn't have a problem paying the $150 because it was worth it. But I would never have gone to the Antler unless somebody had marketed and said, you should do that. If your people are not sharing and you're not teaching them to share to bring guests, then they're not going to. There's always an initial excitement when somebody goes to a new place and gets touched. We see this in the Bible where somebody got healed and they went and told everybody, and Jesus said, shh. But after a while, that kind of calms down. So to train your people that they are the marketer is what happens when you reach over 500 people. And now most of your new clients, most of your new customers, most of the new people, most of the guests that are coming into a church are people that are coming because your people have been taught how to constantly share their faith, how to constantly bring in people, how to constantly invite individuals. And if you do that, your church will always grow because you're always having new clients come in the building. So some mistakes that I've made, and we made our greater changes this year. We started making the changes last year. Was a thing that I love called Rock the City, or what the staff call Elmira Fest. I think that's so weak, just so weak. Rock the City, The Rock the City, at one of them cost us $42,000. It was right here in this town, in our hometown. Normally, we do them in the city of Elmira, but one year we did it right here in Horseheads. And when everything was said and done, after renting all of the stage and the sound and putting everything together, and we had fireworks that year, and I mean, it was a big shebang. It was $42,000. We had 100 people give their hearts to Jesus Christ, and we retained 4 families. The ROI was $10,000 per family. Now in eternity, let's just talk eternity. What's a soul worth? Hallelujah. But for ROI, that's bad. Return on investment was bad. And there had to be a change. And so this year we've made some changes, and we're gonna, we've purchase things to make this happen differently. It will cost us so much less money. So our ROI, we don't want to stop outreaching, but we got to be wise how we outreach, because it costs money to reach out to people, costs money to retain people, costs money to get these people through the doors. It's not a cheap experience. It is something that is important. Now here's some amazing numbers. Ready? A church that has only 3 guests a week is what we call in maintenance mode. They're only going to maintain what they got. A church that gets 5 guests a week out of 100 is considered a growing church. So if you have 5 people and you have 100 people in your church, you have 5 people visiting that week, you are a growing church. Now let's look at the numbers now. If you're at a church of 500 and you have 25, you're a growing church. But if you're a church of 500 and you only have 18 guests, you're a maintenance church. So there's a loss there. Now, a church that has 7 to 10 guests out of 100, you are a rapidly growing church. I don't like rapidly growing churches. Why? It's not always the case, but the majority of the case, it's called not an explosion, but an implosion. There's a difference. An explosion is boom. An explosion is boom. It comes in on itself. Usually a rapid growing ministry or church implodes because they do not have the structure prepared to be able to handle the growth that is there. Therefore, what occurs is they can't minister to the people properly and people start leaving. People walk away. Now, a very strategic church that is going to have a rapid growth, a strategic church is going to have a plan. Not only, let's be real. So let's just say you start with 100 people. But now, within a year or two, you're 1,000 people. That's rapid growth. That means you have to have leaders. You have to have the right structure. You have to have the right infrastructure. You have to have the right follow through. You have to have youth. You have to have young adults. You have to have this. You have to have that. So all of a sudden, you've got to have an entire structure. Now, churches with lots of finances can hire outside. But remember, the majority of trouble that you're going to have within any church is not the people, but it is your staff. So the more hired in staff you have, the more trouble you have because of the focal that they have. So small growth or constant growth is your greater desire, not instant growth or 7 to 10 a week, unless you have it pre-planned to be able to house, strengthen the structure to where it will not implode in and of itself. A business that did that was a business called TCN. I'd actually joined the business. It was back in the old days when phone cards first came out. So instead of getting a cell phone, they were selling phone cards. Now, phone cards, they made it so that the amount of money that was being spent on a weekly, thank you, sir, on a weekly basis was less. Now, what's great about that is they exploded. I'm talking massive explosion in growth. You know what they didn't do? They didn't plan for it. They didn't have the infrastructure for it. So you know what happened? People are calling for cards. Guess what was happening? There weren't any. So now they're using the TCN network. Guess what happened? Well, it wasn't large enough to handle all the calls coming through it. A successful business was destroyed because the infrastructure wasn't settled properly to be able to house the growth. So the issue isn't just getting guests. The issue is, do you have the infrastructure set to be able to handle the guests that you have and to expand? So my question to you is this. If your ministry doubled next week, your department doubled next week, your business doubled next week, could you handle it? And if you can't, why can't you? Simple. You're not planning for it. You're not asking God for it. Well, I'm praying for revival. He won't send you revival. You'll kill the people. So if you're going to be a person that's going to retain guests, the question isn't just how do I get the guests? The question is, am I okay when they get here? Do we have what it takes to retain them? Do we have what it takes to take care of them? Do we have what it takes to love them? Or, like Ray's Sub Shop, did I order enough meat this week to make sure that if somebody orders a turkey with provolone, that I can feed them? Because if you can't feed them, watch now, they order the turkey with provolone. I'm sorry, we're out of turkey. Well, I have ham. We didn't get enough ham this week either. Well, I don't like roast. Here comes Jersey Mike's. Off you go. And then what happens? Then you get mad. Well, where's their loyalty? It's not their loyalty. Where's your loyalty? Where's your pre-planning? Where have you prepared to be able to handle and house the individuals that you're believing God for? And I do want to say this. Don't build off another man's foundation. What is amazing with churches is they love guests that come from other churches. I personally don't mind people that come from other churches as long as they're going to behave themselves. If not, I don't mind expelling them, helping them understand that this is probably not the church for them. But it amazes me, especially with church splits. I'll just say it right into the camera. Church splits are demonic. They're satanic. Well, I just didn't agree. Then don't go down the road. Go to another city. Because you know if you go down the road, you're going to take 50, 60 people from them, and you're going to launch your church with somebody else's sheep. You're not good. You're a thief. Oh, that's right. That's what the Bible calls the devil. I've never seen minus in the Bible. I've never seen division in the Bible. In fact, the Bible says, mark those who cause division among you. So don't build off somebody else's foundation. Be brave enough, be smart enough, have enough vision, have enough strategy to build what God has called you to build, or a company that God has called you to build it without having to, come on now, pirate somebody else's. Be brave. I don't ever consider it success when somebody goes down the road and they have a church of 60, 70, 100 people down the street that they shanghaied from somebody else's. In fact, I won't even work with people like that. Made a decision many years ago. Actually helped a person not too long ago, probably about 10 years ago. I helped a church. I didn't know their roots, and found out later what their roots was. They split another church to start their church. I stepped right away from them and would never work with them again. Why? Because that's demonic foundation. So don't consider yourself great. I remember one time, one guy said to me, I got to stop. One guy said to me, he said, we just started going to a new church. I said, well, which one is that? And he told me the name, and he says, yeah, we were all at this other church down the road, and the youth pastor didn't like it, so we moved up the road, about 5-7 miles with about 100 of their people, and we started. I says, I think that you're in sin. Well, what do you mean by that? God told him to do that. I said, God would never tell him to split his own church. Be brave enough to go to another town. We don't need new bastardizing. We need the kingdom. There are enough new customers out there, people going to hell, that you can go out and have a good strategy to get them saved, set free, and build God's kingdom. Say amen or oh my. All right, I don't even know how I got there, but I was there. Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna complete this training next week, so make sure that you're here next week. But I would encourage you also, if you will go out and ask another leader, this is good material, and I know this will help you and build you and strengthen you. If you would have them watch or maybe share this as a pastor, you can share this with your own staff. You don't need to reteach it. You can actually send them the link and then have them a responsibility to report back to you what they learned. This way, you don't have to recreate the wheel. So I thank you very much for watching. We'll complete this topic next week.
Thank you for tuning in to Empowering Pastors and Leaders with Dr. Micheal Spencer. If you're looking for helpful, life-changing, and empowering resources, Dr. Micheal Spencer's books are available here. Just click on the link below and get your copies today. Don't wait. These resources will bring about the change and success you've been looking for. If you'd like to know more about empowering pastors and leaders, please visit michealspencerministries.com. Also, if you'd like to become a partner with Empowering Pastors and Leaders, sign up online for the opportunity to do so. Thank you in advance for your financial support to help us reach into the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and Africa, and the different parts of the world. Empowering Pastors and Leaders will equip you to transform your personal life, ministry, or business to become the best leader God designed for you to be. Invest in yourself today and be the most effective leader you've ever been.